G'day you mob, welcome to this episode of Aussie English. Today I want to introduce my guest Juliana Gomes, who is a Brazilian who has come to Australia, I think in 2008, she said, and I saw her story. Noah's on my shoulders, by the way, guys. I saw her story going around social media recently, and a bunch of you asked me to get her on the podcast. So I thought I would do just that. I sent her an email, and yeah, basically, she came here in 2008 with no English, with no money. She got set up. I'm going to let Noah down. She got set up and has eventually become an award-winning real estate agent in Burleigh Heads in Queensland, right on the Gold Coast, and has actually sold something like $90 million worth of property. So anyway, it's an incredible story. We had a little bit of an issue with the audio, so it does sound a little bit like she's on the phone. So take that into account. Apologies for any bad audio there, but I guess, yeah, treat it like you're on the phone with Juliana. Anyway, without any further ado, guys, we ready to go, Noah? Yeah, give me the thumbs up. All right, we're ready to go. Let's do it. G'day guys, welcome to this episode of Aussie English. Today I have special guest Juliana Gomes from Brazil, who I recently saw. I think I had a few different listeners and viewers of Aussie English sending me through, you need to get this lady on the podcast. You got to get her story on there. And I was like, I already sent her an invite because I saw it on one of my friends' feeds. But Juliana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Pete, for having me here. Really thrilled, really honored to be here.
So you have a really incredible story. The news story that was going around was, real estate agent from overseas, sells $90 million worth of property. She's a star. Obviously, there's a lot more behind that story, which is why I wanted to get you on the podcast, as I've got a lot of, not just Brazilians, but a lot of immigrants coming out here, living in Australia, trying to set up life. Do you want to just start with where you came from in Brazil and why you decided to leave and what made you decide to come to Australia?
Yeah, sure, 100%. So I'm originally from Porto Alegre. It's the biggest city in Brazil, the third biggest city, let me correct that, third biggest city in Brazil, down south. So similar climate to Melbourne. So it is a little bit cooler. It's cold and a lot of people. And I've always loved surfing. I've discovered the passion from surfing since a very young age. So I've always been thrilled about, going to the beach on the weekend. So growing up, my dream was always to live on the beach. And consequently, wanted to improve my English, which was very poor. And while studying at university, I realized that there was a massive need to learn the language and open doors. So similar to quite a lot of immigrants and Brazilians, that you get to a point of your studies and you want to improve yourself, so you decide to move, travel, go overseas. So I've always had the dream of Australia because it's a very similar climate to Brazil, and I just felt that it would be home. Plus, I love the accent as well. So you have to choose, which country do you want to learn, and if you go to America and it's more of an American accent or similar to the UK accent. I always love Australia. So at a very young age, I always had the dream to travel. It was very expensive to travel. So I just had to, line a few things in order to come to Australia. And I think that was the part of the journey. So just having that willingness to pursue the dream and just leave everything behind and travel to Australia. I barely just had the money. I just had the money for the plane and for the first month of English studies when I arrived.
Let me pause you there, because that seems to be a very common story for Brazilians at least. How do you guys, to put it crassly, how do you guys have the balls to just have enough money to arrive here and then you're like, we'll suck it and see. We'll see what happens. That seems to be a common feature with Brazilians at least.
100%. It's extremely expensive to come to Australia. So when you saving, and especially with the real, so our money, it's worth, at the moment, I think it's worth 5 times. So
wow, it's gone that far. It was 3 times a little while ago.
So So when I first arrived in Australia in 2008, it would have been around 3 times. So now with the economy in Brazil not being so good with COVID, is now about 5 times. So it's quite expensive to come. So showcasing to the government that you got to demonstrate quite a lot of funds. So it's just a battle itself to obtain a visa as a tourist visa or scholarship to study for a 6-month period of time. And that's exactly what I had. I just had the visa for 6 months, and you just have the desire peak of going to another country, and it can't really get worse than whatever it is back in Brazil. It's a really difficult country. You have a lot of people, and it's very hard to, it's very hard to be, you just have to, get a job. Everything's hard, really.
Well, I had that,
So
my wife's sister, they're from Maranhão in São Luís, and they were, I'm always like, oh, we should get your sister to come out here. I'm sure she'd love it. And Kel's always like, she's got a really good job. There's no chance. There's no chance she's giving that job up. Like, she works, really hard. She worked really hard to get it. And now she's kind of set for life. She's like, there's no chance.
Yes, exactly. Well, I suppose to me, I've always had the dream, and I started university. I knew that I needed to learn English. I was 20 years old when I arrived in Australia, so I didn't have much anyway. So for me, there was a very fortunate position that I could just give up my studies and miss the family in order to pursue a better life for my family and for myself. And anytime having a family and building a career. So that was, that's the end goal, which I'm living the dream now. But in the beginning, that was the choice, just leaving the family behind and following the dreams and following, the passion and learning the language. So arriving, I literally had a backpack and a surfboard and no contact, no place to stay, absolutely nothing. And from the moment I arrived, I had to figure it out. So
what were you thinking at the time? So you step off the plane, you've got your surfboard, you've got, a little bit of money in your backpack full of stuff. What was going through your mind when you first sort of,
I literally, So I arrived, was late in the afternoon. So the times and everything was all opposite. I was thrilled to be in Australia, extremely happy. And then the next day, because of the time zone, I woke up at 4 a.m. I was like, right.
Jet lag.
Jet lagged. Everything was different. So I just first took a bus to Burleigh Heights, which were where the school was located, and I fell in love. I just crossing the bridge from Coolangatta and going on a bus trip and crossing the bridge, looking Talabudra, looking Currumbin, beautiful scenery. I thought to myself, no, this is what I want to be, at least for a long, long time.
So it was love at first sight, huh?
Was love at first sight. There was no turning back, and I didn't say that to my parents at first. But
were they hoping it was just a sort of it's just a phase?
Yeah. Just a phase, no. But again, later they were able to come over and visit me, and they loved it as well. So they were like,
you're going to have to get a bigger house with a few more extra rooms.
Exactly, absolutely. So that's the story arriving. So there was never a plan A, B. There was always a plan A, and there was to stay, improve my English, and then quickly at the school that helped me set up a bank account, bought a phone, bought a newspaper. And if you think about it, it was 10 years ago. So internet and everything were not as fast as it is now. Even recording my memories and videos and we didn't have an iPhone then.
Oh, for sure. Well, they probably only came out in 2009, 2010, whatever it was. Yeah. It is pretty funny how much everything's changed so quickly. Like I remember having in university, having the phone where you push the top up and it has those, the keys still for like all the different letters and numbers. And now that's like, so foreign.
Oh, totally. That was my phone. I think I paid for like $30 and
So how did you survive once you got here and you were set up with school and everything? Did you have somewhere organized where you were going to live or a way to make money, or you were just like, I'll work that out?
Not at all. I worked it out. So I only had a week book at this little hostel, and together with my partner at the time, we literally asked the school, so what's the best newspaper? We check on the newspaper, what was as in advertisements for people looking for share accommodation, share room. I really didn't want to stay with a group of Brazilians because that would impact on my English. So my first preference was to be either on myself or with an Australian family. And that's literally what happened. We found this ad, and that's another funny story. This family had a room, literally a studio on top of the garage, and they wasn't even ready, but they started already advertising. And there was only $200 a week, so extremely cheap. There was literally all we could pay at the time with all our savings. So with our phone, we rang them. We said about the ad. We couldn't understand a word of what they said. So there was nothing. There was no response then. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to walk to this house and introduce myself, be there in person. When we arrived, the lady, we're trying to communicate with very poor English. And the lady did say that she was trying to call me, but I didn't answer. And yeah, it was just a total disaster. But at the end of the day, we've introduced myself, and, they found that we were funny and just, Brazilian, and my partner, ex-partner, Argentinian at the time. So they've embraced us, and we ended up living with this family for 2 years on top of the garage. So it was a very small room, very low rent, but was enough for us to bridge the gap in between learning a little bit more in order to get a better accommodation. So that was perfect. So we got the accommodation, and then work was the other challenge as well. So my first job, which I really needed to get a job, that's another funny story. There was another advertising for me to work as a waitress, and I turn up and, beautiful white shirt and black pants, was ready to go and work as a waitress. My English was so bad, they could not get me to work as a waitress. So they took me straight in the kitchen, and I washed dishes for 10 hours of this event that I was supposed to work as a waitress. But I couldn't say no because I really needed the money, and everything was an opportunity. So that was my first job experience, just washing dishes and just really being thrown into the deep end. And then from there, I thought to myself, no, I need to get a better job.
Was that on the second day, or was that after a few weeks of working there?
That would have been like 2 days later. I thought to myself, no, I need to get a better job. So slowly I was searching, and it was in August when I arrived. So it was after winter. There wasn't right in the middle of summer. So things were a little bit quiet on the Gold Coast. So it was just harder to get a job at that point in time, but I just kept persistent. And I thought to myself, I need to work in a place where the locals go, just so I can learn the language. And that's why I really had Surf Life Saving Club was the perfect choice, because that way, I could really immerse myself into the Australian culture. That was my biggest thing.
Do you want to mention quickly what a Surf Life Saving Club is for those who may not know?
Yes, exactly. So a Surf Life Saving Club, I didn't know at the time, but every single beach you have one representative, and this is where in Australia it's so common. You do Surf Life Saving Club, so that's connected straight away with the life saving, and it's beautiful because it teaches the young, people how to have manners, or how to look after themselves in water and rescue and all sorts of things.
Do you call them little nippers up there?
Yes.
Yeah, we call them that down
nippers.
here as well, little nippers.
Yeah, you've got nippers and the turtles and all different, but it englobes a whole bunch of families, and they're all in the one purpose, which is the love for the sea and rescuing. And I thought that was very interesting because in Brazil we have nothing, similar to that. And I thought it was pretty amazing to be a part of that community. And then again, being a part of the community, it helps each other. And was my biggest goal.
So tell us that story though about how you got Burleigh Heads. Was it Mowbray Park Surf Club?
Park.
Yeah, how you got that job, because that was a really interesting story I was reading about in one of the articles on you.
yeah, that's another interesting story. So the reason why I really wanted this surf club is because the house that I rented the studio was virtually 1.5 kilometers, so I could go, bike riding or walking to the surf club. It was near the school as well, so that was absolutely perfect. So every Friday afternoon after school, for several weeks, I would pop in and say hello. I've organized a resume with all the reference from Brazil, no reference in Australia. My English was really poor. Organized kept, delivering the resume and the curriculum in, several restaurants, but that was the club that I wanted. So every Friday afternoon, I would just pop in and say hello with my pidgin English. And I had a different, every time I had different sentences. So for example, one would be, can I have a job? So I would, before getting in, I would just read the sentence, walk in, talk to the manager.
Give me a job.
That was it. Give me a job. Can I have a job? And then the last sentence that I got, and I could understand that he said, he asked me, where are you from? And I said, from Brazil. And I managed to ask him, where are you from? And then he said, I'm from the UK. And then I said, the Beatles. My dad loved the Beatles. And then he started laughing.
Not another one.
That was, my dad loves the Beatles. So that was, one thing that we could connect. I was just trying to connect and get his attention. And then he said, okay, come back next Friday and you get started. Help me with, the glasses and cleaning. And that was it. So we started the following week, just collecting, glasses and taking to the kitchen. From cleaning tables for then, helping behind the bar, and then the latest taking orders and
So have you?
And then I
sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, then I ended up staying in the surf club for 2 years since I started.
So have you always had this kind of go get 'em, really confident and don't take no for an answer kind of approach to these things?
I think it's funny looking back at it. I didn't really have a choice, really. I needed to get it. I did not have a choice because the choice was going to be going back to Elevations restaurant and work for 10 hours as a dishwasher.
Yeah.
The second choice was going back to Brazil and not learning the language. So in Australia, it's the land of opportunity. So it depends how you see it. So I saw it as a next step. What's the next step? I need to get this. So just so focused on obtaining the little things and learning and really persevering. I just found that the Australians, they really admire and appreciate work ethic and attitude and all sort of the values.
What would you say? Because I have from time to time met people where they say, I can't find a job or my English is really horrible. And when I kind of follow it up with questions, a lot of the time it seems like they're not pushing themselves, whether it's they've moved in with a bunch of Brazilians or they haven't really handed in that many resumes to different places. They haven't really gone after it. What kind of advice would you give those sorts of people in those positions? How can they become more like you?
Oh, thank you. Look, I think my biggest advice is, first of all, when you're arriving, it's so easy to get to know other Brazilians and share story and congregate in the Brazilian community, which I missed on a lot of opportunities, lots of friends. But what I ended up realizing was that a lot of the Brazilian friends that we were, connecting and talking, they were going back to Brazil. And that wasn't my purpose. That wasn't my goal. So it depends what you want to do. If your goal is to stay in Australia and have a family and build a dream life in Australia, well, just check your direction, because the direction that they were taking was different to my direction. So I think just follow your goal and your purpose and see where you want to go. So if the goal is to stay in Australia, my biggest advice would be to immerse yourself and learn as much as you can about the Australian culture and way of life. Appreciate what we have here and build from that. And don't take a no for an answer. Certainly, go and it's not 1 week that you will, distribute curriculum and you'll get a job. It could take 3 weeks. If there is a place that you want to work, you just go there every single day. They will note you. They will say, do not come back anymore, but you keep coming back and they will find you something to do. Like literally within reason, just be polite and happy and, smile. I think that's the biggest thing. But they will find, something for you to do, and that's 1 foot at the door. So yeah, that's my biggest advice. Just keep trying.
So what was the next step after you were working at the surf club and you said you still sort of had basic English? What was how did the story continue from there, and how did you develop your English? Yeah,
so my English was still very, from people to people, was very hospitality based. So that chit chat, that was, serving behind the bar. So I had to really open up my vocabulary in order to talk to lawyers, doctors, and for them to believe that I could sell their biggest asset, something that somebody has been working their life on and putting money into it. They had to believe that I have the ability to sell that product. So that was a totally different vocabulary that I had to learn. So from that, working at the surf club and connecting with locals, I realized it was in 2009, 2010 that the most topic, people were talking on the tables was real estate, because the market had really, 2007, 2008 had really gone up, and now it was coming down. So there was a lot of people talking about the economy and the properties, and I've always loved selling. I think I've always loved helping others and connecting with people. So selling for me, I was already doing that on a daily basis, working at the surf club. Really, selling the club, selling the table, selling the food. You're constantly doing that. So I thought to myself, well, why not sell real estate? So living at the studio, the owner of the house, he was already in the real estate industry as well. So he used to sell house and land package. So I could pick up quite a lot of different vocabularies, and I ended up helping him with a website, so learning from just by watching and virtually working for free. So all the time that I used to work at the surf club, I used to try to communicate as much as I could. But then every time that I was at home, I used to, connect with him and change ideas, reading books, websites, just trying to perfect myself. And then that's when the desire came to start looking for a job. We're very bad English, but at least I said to Connor, the owner of the agency, I said, look, I'll work for free. Just give me an opportunity to get started. And I worked many, many hours virtually for free. There was the time that he would give me, but I would work extra hours in order to get that learning. And there was many people that helped me along the way. Writing property descriptions, that was really hard as well. So yeah, and it took years. It took good solid 5 years for me to start moving forward and having more confidence, because there's also the confidence within yourself, because you know what you're doing, but it's how you communicate and how listening to others. So it was just that jump. I just had to speak with Nick and say, look, Nick, I have the desire of starting real estate. I was afraid from leaving the surf club, which was a secure job, to go to real estate, which I was going to earn a lot less than what I was earning. But I just had to make that jump and learn as quick as I could in order to survive. So just had to make the decision to go from one to the other.
Did you feel like giving up at any point?
Real estate?
Just in general, and just being like, this is too hard, time to go back to Brazil. And did those thoughts ever cross your mind? No, never going back to Brazil. I've always questioned my ability to sell real estate and being able to learn. But at the end of the day, the what ifs, the fear of not being able to achieve what I came here for was a lot bigger than the fear of not proceeding. You know what I mean? I had to really keep moving forward and believing. And then you have a lot of rejection in sales. You have a lot of rejection from clients. So when I started Kingfisher Realty, I used to do a lot of cold calling. Funny enough, that was my job at the end. So when Connor put me to do that, a lot of people would start calling back the office, but not because they wanted to sell from me, just because they couldn't understand what I was saying. So at least I got their attention. And then a lot of clients, they asked Connor, what are you doing? She can't even speak the language. So there was a lot of rejection from that. But then at the end, I would call them so many times and my English was getting better, that at the end they were cheering that my English was getting better and they could understand me. So it was just, the evolution. You just keep moving forward. So what do you do in order to avoid losing confidence when you face those kinds of issues? Because I think a lot of people are very shy. They don't want to talk too much, and especially if they get those sorts of reactions where people say, I can't understand you or anything, it usually ends up being a sort of positive feedback spiral where they just end up shutting down and being very quiet and losing confidence. It seems like you went the opposite direction. What sort of tips would you give people in order to go up instead of down in confidence in those situations?
Well, I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've listened to a lot of mentors, that would encourage me. I think you also have to, it's just how you look at things. If you think about you coming from a totally different country with different culture, you have so much on your bag, you have so much to offer, that as soon as you can overcome that fear of learning a new language, you're going to double like that. It's just going to really, you're going to do so well, because it's not that you're starting from zero. You're already coming, from a lot of, you have a lot of experience. So I think real estate helped me with that, because it's a work or job that I could just have all my qualities. I just needed to learn the language. So once I've learned the language and you can communicate, that's when you start putting your point across. But you also have to think about, what are the other people, and at the end, do they have the right to say anything? I think I've gone through so much as well, that every single little stone, it just helped me to become stronger. But I think, it's just how you see it. Glass full, glass empty. You just have to be positive at every single time and believe in yourself. I think that's the most important thing, believe. But trust me, I still have days that I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Which is normal. But that's when you got to listen to podcasts and be surrounded by people that will inspire you. And there are so many people that, have reached from zero to a lot. You just got to follow the ones that inspire you and keep going.
So you ended up becoming an award-winning real estate agent, right? And the thing that, all the articles kept touting was that you'd sold now $90 million worth of property.
Yeah.
Which is, at first I thought that was like, it was your property, and I was like, wow. But I got it after reading the articles. But that's still, I imagine that's 180, 200 plus houses. Like, that's ridiculous. So what was the story from the point of obviously joining Kingfisher Realty and having very basic English and being embarrassed on the phone because people didn't understand you, to becoming an award-winning realtor selling over $90 million worth of property in 5-6 years?
Yes. Yes, exactly. You're right. So 10 years working with Kingfisher Realty. I've decided to stay with one agency in Burleigh, which is a suburb that I love. Was really about me. A lot of agents that I've noticed over the years, they chop and change and go to different agencies. But for me, that wasn't going to work, because I would lose, the credibility in my profile. I think all the locals that I've met at the Surf Life Saving Club, I've applied the same qualities at the Surf Life Saving Club to my career in real estate. So every single person that would come into the counter and order a fish and chips, I would do the best I can for them. So they knew me from, that hard work, attitude, perseverance. So moving from the surf club and doing the best I could there, I've just applied the same systems at the real estate. So every single person that would walk in the door of the office, I was the first to jump out of the chair and say, hello, how can I help you? So every single contact was a potential lead, a potential seller, a potential buyer, somebody that I could help. So I think, moving forward, I was, I had the ability to connect with a lot of people. Connor helped me with a few clients. Then he would say, hey, Juliana will be able to help you. And then from selling one house, which my first house that I sold was actually a family that used to train at NIPAs and do all the life saving clubs. So
I was about to ask you, did you ever have anyone you sold to or helped that you had sold fish and chips to?
So many. And people would always remember from the lady that used to be at the Surf Life Saving Club is now real estate agent. And I continue on doing it. And every year that they used to go to the club, they would ask me about it. And I would be like, yeah, I'm still here. So many years after so many years, people started to believe that, hey, she's doing the right thing. That's what she wants to do. And she's happy. So then they would then come back to me and to sell their houses. So I ended up selling the president of the club. I sold his daughter's house. I have a relationship with the family. So many people have continued the relationship, which is the reason why I started the surf club, is just to embrace and ingrain myself in the community. I think, from from the club and to the real estate, and just connecting the dots and continue on with the conversation, helping them as much as I could. It helped me to help more and more people. Then with the referrals, testimonials, that helps a lot as well. The people that already knew me from there.
Can I ask you a sort of selfish question here? I've obviously had a lot of interactions with realtors in the past, wanting to rent houses or even looking to buy them. Who do you guys represent ultimately when
The seller.
yeah, exactly. Because I was wondering, because I'm like, you seem to have two sides, right? It seems to be that it can be a difficult position at times where you're trying to get the best for both worlds, but I feel like there is a certain skew to it, right?
Yeah, certainly. The seller approached us to sell the property, so they're the ones that we are charging, and they're the one that entrusted us with the sale. So they are the ones that are paying us a commission.
Yeah.
So I work for the seller, so I'm working for their instructions. So I always ask, so what's your instructions? I can demonstrate them, a possibility A, possibility B, but at the end of the day, they will tell me what they want me to do.
Yeah.
So if the instructions is to sell the house, I'll do the best I can with the buyer. And I always say to the buyer, look, as much as I like you and want to sell the house to you, I'm still working for the vendor. So as much as I like you, I'm still representing my client. So I try to be, a mediator and do the best I can for both. But it will come to a point where I will push the buyers as much as I can, and then I can go back to the vendor and say, okay, the buyer's about to move. This is where we're at. So then it's up to the vendor to say yes or no. So yes, it is a bit of a, jiggling and negotiation, but I love it. That's why I have a job.
All right. So moving on from the career and getting to this point, I think you've since met an Australian guy and started your own family. Are you okay to tell us a bit about how that went and what that story is?
That's a funny story as well. So,
you seem to be full of them.
Yes, I am. Well, I've met Chris quite a long time ago when I was actually selling his apartment. And the story goes that I couldn't sell the apartment at that time, and he was just going through, his own marriage, which I didn't know at the time. And I was really good friends with his wife at the time. So then we couldn't sell the apartment. They have a little girl together, and that was it. He came to the office and said, "Hey, the price that I was expecting, it's not enough to cover. So we'd like to take the property off the market." And I was totally fine with it. And that was it. That was the end of the story. 4 years later, and I'm still doing the same thing that I'm doing. He then approached me to sell the apartment again. I was then, single, and he was single as well. And after we sold the apartment, we continue on with the relationship. So, we just had a coffee and we started going to the beach and surfing, and that's how we continue with the relationship. Was only after we sold the apartment. So that was a rule for me not to, interact with any clients whatsoever.
100%.
So then,
Yeah, sorry, keep going.
I was going to say, so then we started dating, and we now have a family together. So we have Samuel, he's 2 years old, and my stepdaughter, Luca, she is 10. So, yeah.
So how does that go language-wise? Because I guess that was what I wanted to get onto, and I assume the process of raising bilingual children. Are you raising Samuel with both Portuguese and English? And then how does the stepdaughter fit in with that as well? Does she get a little bit by sort of like contact, or is she just full English?
Luke is full English. Her mom is from Sweden as well, just to mix things up. So, so she knows a few words and a few sentences she can understand. Samuel, he's bilingual, so he understands Portuguese as much as he understands English. And, for me, it was a very important thing to continue with the Portuguese because all my family is back in Brazil.
Bingo.
And my parents, in order for me to work, after I had Samuel, they spent the first 18 months of his life with, in Australia in the house that I bought. So they're living very close to us. yeah, so they, helped me a lot with Samuel when he was a baby until, toddler. And then now they're back in Brazil, trying to come up again with COVID, just with the situation. Yeah, so they've always spoken Portuguese with Samuel, and I always speak Portuguese with Samuel. Chris knows quite a lot as well, and he's learning as Samuel learns as well. But we mix everything, and even Samuel now mixes everything. He speaks quite a lot for a 2-year-old, and he mixes both Portuguese and English in one sentence. So it's quite funny.
Did you have a certain method that you used when looking into raising bilingual children, or did you just sort of do it by the seat of your pants and you were like, he'll work it out? Because I get a lot of questions like that where they're like, what do I do? There's so many methods. Is there one that you picked?
Right. To be brutally honest with you, my desire was always to speak Portuguese with him, and having the family around sometimes in the dinner table when we are together. I speak English with everybody just so everybody can understand and nobody feels left out. But when it's between Samuel and I always switch to Portuguese. So I think the moment he was born, I look at him and I locked in my brain that I will speak Portuguese with you. Yeah. So that's what I try to do a lot. I do, shift from one to the other sometimes with him. But if I say something in English to him, I always go back to Portuguese and say the same sentence just so he understands. So that's, not much thought into it. It's just, how it works for us. And having my parents here as well, we always speak in Portuguese within the four of us, my parents, myself and Samuel. But we keep switching. But I think it's 101. It's just our special bond. That's how I see it.
Well, I think it's really important for for any child that's being raised bilingual too, to have that anchor point, whether it's to a person or a specific place or time where they know this is Portuguese and this is English. Otherwise, I think they end up taking the path of least resistance.
Yes.
Was it hard at all convincing your partner or husband to pick up Portuguese, or did he dive in?
No. He dived in. He started learning as soon as we started our relationship. He wanted to learn, and he downloaded the app Duolingo. So he would just play and learn every little word. It's because he also wanted to connect with my parents as well. He just wanted to showcase that he was interested and willing to learn for sure.
Man, you guys sound like a Queensland version of us. Because we're like, it's literally, I started learning Portuguese when I started dating Kel, because I thought, I want to embrace your culture and understand things. Exactly. When we had a kid as well, it's the same thing of she speaks just Portuguese with him. I do as well now. I don't speak English with him, but anytime we're outside the house, we'll speak English with him when there are other English speakers. But also the most important thing for me was that I could speak and communicate, and Noah could as well, my son, with Kel's family, who are all back in Brazil and don't. I think, a few of the younger ones might have rudimentary English, but if I were to never learn Portuguese, it would be a situation where I'm just going to be speaking through Kel or other people.
Yeah,
exactly. I just never wanted that. I wanted that autonomy, right? So
yes, exactly.
Are you at a point now where you are diving back in at all to developing a Portuguese, Brazilian sort of, what would you call it, kind of community around you to develop your son's Portuguese, to sort of re-solidify that and encourage that? And especially now that you've set yourself up?
Yeah, certainly. We have several Brazilian friends, and the Brazilian community is very much part of our, daily life. And that's why Chris would like to embrace Portuguese even more. Yeah. But yes, certainly. Just to give you an example, the childcare that Samuel goes to, there's 2 Brazilian teachers on his class. So they speak Portuguese with him at the Little Scholars. That's the name of the kindy. So that's brilliant as well. So, as they communicate with him one-on-one, they speak Portuguese, and with other children in English. So we are very, ingrained into the Brazilian community as well. And I do have several Brazilians working with me as well, trying to give the opportunity to others, whether they'll be delivering flyers, that's going to be, cleaning, that's going to be marketing. It's certainly, in context, the Brazilian community, trying to help people as much as they have helped me to be where I am now.
Yeah, far out. And so talking a little bit about your identity, how do you feel now after being in Australia since 2008, so 12
Yeah.
years, right? I keep saying this to my wife. She's been here since, how long's she been here? She's probably been here for 5 years now. And
Mhm.
she was saying the other day when I was like, well, how does it work with your identity when you haven't been home for so long and you're kind of now
Mhm.
distancing yourself from Bolsonaro and a lot of these other things that are Brazilian? Do you see yourself as Australian? Do you see yourself as Brazilian? Are you Brozzy? Are you neither? So how do you sort of see your identity now? Has it changed?
Yeah. It hasn't changed. My heart's still there. I love the food. I love, the culture in so many aspects. So I talk to my parents every single day. We have Brazilian channels on our TV. I love the food. I cook feijão
Oh,
every
yeah.
week for Senor. So I think it's so important to continue, with that. It's the roots is where I'm from. So
Yeah.
I would never ignore that. But I also appreciate everything that I've obtained here. So I like to consider myself both.
So
And I
Brozzy.
do have Brazil. I do have Australian citizenship and Brazilian citizenship. So
Yeah.
this is where I am. I will never, say one is better than the other. I prefer to live in Australia and have more opportunities here. But at the same time, this is where my family is as well. And I'd like Samuel to embrace that as much as I do. And for him to know that, this is where I come from and
Yeah.
everything they've given away in order to be here and to give him this, better quality of life. And he loves going to the beach, and he's just, even as a 2-year-old, just gets so excited. And I'm so happy that he has the opportunity to go to the beach on the weekend, something that I've always wanted when I was, a child. I've always lived in a big city and looking through the window on a weekend and stuck in an apartment. I thought to myself, nah, I need to, I want to do better for my family and yeah, have more options.
It is good that you can kind of take the best of both, right? And so
Yeah,
you get this sort of concentrated identity that is just awesomeness. You don't have to worry about the downsides. You just leave both of them on either side.
exactly.
So are there any good Brazilian restaurants nearby? Are you going to open one of those
Yeah.
maybe?
No, there's 2 great Brazilian restaurants on the Gold Coast that I always go all the time. Is Beleza, and there's another one in Miami, which is a little pop-up, and they sell paçoca, they sell chocolates, they sell feijão, and yeah, picanha, pão de queijo, all the things. So it's really good, really good.
Awesome. Well, I guess the last sort of question would be, well, I've got 2 questions for you. Did you have much culture shock when you got to Australia? Were there any things that you saw or heard or, experienced where you were just like, whoa, wasn't expecting that? Or, wow, this is really cool. And yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, many. I think the first ones that come to mind is the time, especially living with observing the Australian family when, we got the room above the garage, that the kids would have dinner at 5:30 p.m. or 6 p.m. That for me was a shock. I could not believe that the kids were having dinner at that time.
Yeah.
But then they were waking up at around 5 in the morning and then going to school. So for me, that was a bit of a shock because coming from Brazil, I would have dinner as a child around 8, 9, 10. So it's
You weren't in bed
late.
by then? You weren't in bed by 8, 9 or 10?
I was not in bed. Because my parents used to finish work at around 6:30. So by the time we come home, and I used to always study in the afternoon as well. So it's totally different times. I think for me, that was, the biggest shock, just to understand food as well, how we in Australia don't have that big lunch, how you don't sit down and have lunch for an hour. It's quite normal in Brazil. Like you literally stop everything that you're doing, you go out for lunch and spend an hour and a half. How it's more, dinner and coffee, and that the whole coffee.
You'd lose your job, I think, if you went out for lunch for an hour and a half.
Yeah, I would not make it for sure. Yeah, so
Far
little
out.
things like that.
Yeah.
And also the culture's being massive as well. Just the way that in Brazil, if you say something, it's different. I'm a very colorful person, and in Australia, I had to learn how to be very black and white, how I speak and how people listen. If I go, I need to go and do it. Otherwise, people will look at me as if I'm deceiving them, and it's a bad thing. In Brazil, it's different.
I had to get my head around understanding how to use eventualmente in Portuguese versus eventually in
Eventually, yeah.
in English, because if I say to my wife, she'll be like, can you do the dishes? And I'll say, yeah, eventually. And she'll be like, well, are you going to do them or not? And
Yeah,
because eventualmente in Portuguese is like, it may happen, it might not, right? Whereas in
exactly.
English, it'll happen, but later.
Yes,
And so there was
exactly.
having to get used to the Brazilian time. I think you guys are
Hmm.
very relaxed. So I would say
Yes,
to my friends,
exactly.
who are Brazilians, let's have a lunch. It'll
Hmm.
start it'll be at 12. So I'll see you at
Hmm.
12 and they show up at 2 and you just be like,
Yeah.
guys, what the hell? If
Yep.
you're gonna be late,
100%.
send me a message.
Exactly. Yep.
So did it
Yeah,
take a
I had
long
to learn
time to
pretty
get used
quickly.
to punctuality and
Yeah.
the time stuff?
Yeah. I had to learn pretty quickly. Yeah. Because that was a no-go in an appointment. So arriving late, that was a no-go. So I've always, if I had an appointment at 12, I will always arrive, 10, 15 minutes early to make sure that I'm there. So yeah, I had to
And
adjust.
do you have to turn that off? You go back to Brazil because people will think you're too keen.
Exactly. Exactly. When I go back to Brazil and people say, all right, we're going to get together at this restaurant at 5, I'm the first one there.
Yeah, and they'll be like, "Whoa, dude, this weirdo!
Oh,
Like, gee, she's
yeah,
keen. Don't you have other things to do?"
exactly. Yeah,
The
for
last
sure.
question was about the sort of unique nature of Australian English. Was it difficult, sort of wrapping your head around all of the slang and the? I mean, I don't know how much experience you have with British English or American English, but the
Mhm.
informality in Australian English, was that ever a difficult thing, or it just came naturally?
I think after reading a lot, speaking with a lot of Australians, that helped a lot. Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard. Even when I started at the Billy Heads Language Center, I thought my English was a little bit better, and I was put back at the first class. And I even challenged that. I said to them, "Look, I think my English is a little bit better. Can you please move me to a higher class? Because yeah, it was really, really hard. I thought arriving in Australia, I had a different, total different vocabulary. I've always learned British way,
Yep.
but in Australia, and that's why I had the difficulty of even order a bread because it's just so different. Yeah, it was really, really hard. But I think by working at the a restaurant and hospitality industry, it helped me to connect with people and listen to how they say it. I think my biggest, I remember the moment clearly when I was getting better at my English and listening to old songs that I used to listen in English and I couldn't understand. When I started understanding them, it was just like, whoa, I can understand what this song is about. And
Hmm.
in some cases, I didn't really like the song because of the lyrics. So
It
it was,
destroyed it
I
for you.
started, it destroyed it. So then I had to go back to all the songs that I liked and listen to them. So constantly, I used to even sleep listening to songs and, just trying to put English into my head as much as I could. But that was really hard for sure. Yeah.
All right. One last question. Can you give me anything you don't like about Australia to put you on the
Ooh,
spot? Yeah. Is there anything? Because
I
I
know.
love hearing this from an outsider's perspective. Obviously, I've grown up here. I see it for what I've always experienced it as. Is there anything that whether or not it's a hate kind of feeling, is there anything that you're sort of like, I don't really like that aspect of Australia or Australian culture?
I guess it's a good thing because it keeps Australia for what it is. But I think they just so strict in in aspects like going to the beach and the drinking, and it's just so strict. That's I think the one thing that question mark. But again, it is what it is, just to keep people in control. But I think the one thing that I would say that's not that keen is how strict they are. I think only having a surf club and that you have to go to the surf club to have, the meals and have to go out at the beach. But again, I can see the benefit on that too.
Yeah.
But coming from Brazil and a culture that people can just do whatever they want, I think different businesses and ideas. Um, there's so many rules and regulations in Australia that sometimes for me is just like, oh, come on, be a little bit more flexible.
I had one of
But that's just
those.
a Brazilian in me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had one of those stories where when
Good.
we were living in Canberra for a bit and we had a friend there who was just relaxed as can be. And I remember him one day, he'd been drinking with us and he was like, we'd ordered pizza and well, he'd ordered the pizza and I thought, oh, it's getting delivered because he'd been drinking and it
Yeah.
wasn't getting delivered and he had to pick it up. And he had like, like a pint glass of beer and just took it, put it in the car, drove off. And I was just like, dude, you can't just do that. If you get pulled over, you're boned. You're screwed.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
what are you
it.
doing? And he's like, man, it's fine in Brazil. They'd probably just be like, whatever, keep going. And I'm like, you're not in Brazil. You're in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, very strict. For sure, very strict. But again,
Anyway,
there's a good side for
yeah, exactly. Anyway, Julia
wonderful.
Gomez, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find out more about you and what you do, especially if they're trying to sell a house in Burleigh Heads?
Yeah, great. Absolutely. Just follow me on Instagram. So it's Juliana Gomes Real Estate altogether. Yeah, any Instagram or Facebook, the same name, Juliana Gomes Real Estate. And I'll be there. More than happy to help you.
No worries. Thank you so much, Juliana. My pleasure.
Wonderful. Have a great day.